This is Charles Wiley from Columbia Theological Seminary, and I'm here today with Martha Moore Keish, the J.B. Green Professor of Theology at Columbia. And we're going to talk a little bit about what she is thinking about in terms of what we're going through with COVID-19 and all the ways it's affecting our lives. So, hello, Martha.
Hey, Charles.
I hope you're doing okay going through all these things.
Yeah, we're doing okay. It's a strange time, and we've suddenly moved all of our classes online, but there have been some surprising gifts in the middle of it, and we're hanging in there.
So as you think about theological or biblical themes related to what the church, what Christians, what people are going through right now, what comes to your mind?
Yeah, it's a great question. Interestingly, one of the things I've been thinking about this week, because in theology class, Theology 2, this past week, we've been talking about the church and what it means to be church. Mm-hmm. That's just where we've been in the syllabus. And therefore, I've been thinking and reading papers and reflecting on what it means to be church in this time of coronavirus. And normally I place such emphasis on face-to-face interaction, on embodied communication, right? Sacramental interaction even. And none of that is possible right now. And so what's been interesting, I think, is to discover how what we mean by place and gathering has been newly complicated. And I have to say, I've discovered ways in which the church online has reached people in ways that weren't happening before. In worship, for example, people are showing up online in ways that they couldn't before because they were in other parts of the country, for example, or confined to home. And now there is a kind of possibility of gathering online and being present to one another in a way that I would never have expected, even as we are also separated in space.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, that I spent most of my theological career thinking about church as community, always thinking about community as being a kind of a visceral, immediate kind of thing. And all of a sudden, I haven't been around anyone in the church community for weeks now.
Yeah, at least not in the same way, right? Not
right. Yeah. I was reading something about working at home, and they were saying that we are best poised to work at home for any people in history because of the tools we have. We have Zoom, we have Facebook, we have email, we have text, we have so many things. And it's interesting that the church right now is dealing with this with tools that they didn't have before.
Exactly. And so, for example, the church where I worship, Central Presbyterian, has been doing Zoom Live. What's that called? No, Facebook Live. I'm sorry, not Zoom. Yes. Facebook Live worship the past couple of weeks. And to see the possibility of people offering prayer requests through the chat function, right? That it actually enables voices to enter into the prayer time in a way that would not ordinarily be audible or possible in a shared space. So it's interesting to me.
I wonder if you found the same thing in online teaching. And the online teaching I've done, it appears as though some people who are less, I'm trying to think of the right verb here, less prominent in discussions in person sometimes become more prominent in online discussions, and the reverse takes place. So someone like me who always talks a lot ends up talking less online, and other people who might be more reticent to break in do so more readily online.
Exactly, especially because as a teacher, I can mute you.
You want to mute me, don't you?
And yes, right, both of those things, so that people who feel shy to speak, even on the Zoom screen, when let's say there might be 16 people on the screen, they might not feel comfortable speaking out, but they'll put something in the chat button, either to me privately or to the whole class, and then I can choose as a teacher how to engage. It is interestingly equalizing in that way. It is true, though, I will say, it does take a lot of work
Oh,
because
I'm sure.
right, you can't count on the embodied cues that
Right.
you can in a face-to-face classroom. And so it takes a lot of attention on the screen to all the possible ways that somebody might be trying to interact, but they're not necessarily as obvious as they might be in the classroom. I don't know. Yeah.
So are there any biblical texts that have been particularly important to you or stood out to you in the last few weeks?
That's interesting. I was thinking, so indirectly, this is what I was thinking about. This past Sunday, I was teaching an online Sunday school class, another new experience. Our church has been arranging all kinds of new online engagements, and so I agreed to help teach a Sunday school morning class. And we're using just the framework of the Apostles' Creed to walk through kind of some basic Christian themes. So we began Sunday with thinking about, what does it mean to say, I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth? And spent a good bit of time thinking about, father language for God and all of the issues around that. But also, what does it mean to say God is maker of heaven and earth? In this time, right, where we have a virus, which is apparently part of the natural created world that God created, do we think that? Do we think that God is the maker even of the coronavirus? So in connection with that, this is getting around to your question about biblical texts. In connection with that, I was helped by an article that Walter Brueggemann just wrote this past week, I think, in Journal for Preachers, where he reflects on, particularly through the Hebrew scriptures, ways that God might be implicated in this. And one of the texts that he turns to, of course, is Job 38 through 41, and the mystery of God as creator. And so partly I was thinking about the way that to affirm God as maker of heaven and earth is to push back on our sometimes anthropocentric view of creation, and to emphasize the way that a lot of things are part of creation that do not feel like they are for flourishing of humankind, right? In the Job passage, it's Leviathan and things like that. And now somehow we have to be able to wrestle with the created world not always being friendly to us. So that's ringing around in my head.
Right. I've been thinking about Psalm 46, though the mountains may fall and the hills turn to dust, and the Lord still stands. And the thing that strikes me about that, in contrast to what we're going through now, is just how beautiful it is outside. And we're going through all this in the midst of just wonder, and it doesn't feel like terrible things are happening because it's so gorgeous outside.
No, that's a great point. That's a great point too. And and so somehow it feels like there's this really sharp juxtaposition of death and life all together at the same time. Right.
Well, this is a challenging time for churches, for believers, for students, and for teachers. And I'm hopeful that we can have some insights from professors like you to share along. And so thanks for taking some time today to share what you're thinking.